Franklin is expected to get way stronger, and the heat across the central part of the United States continues to build like crazy. What's going on, guys? I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kagas. We're going to take a look at the latest forecast from the National Hurricane Center when it comes to Franklin. Expected to really explode as it leaves the Dominican Republic after dropping a lot of flooding rain for the island. The heat wave also continues to build. This is going to hang on for a few more days, but we do have some relief coming, at least for the eastern side of this big heat dome. We're going to break that down for you. Take a look at the temperature and rainfall outlook over the next 6 to 10 days if you stick with me towards the end of the video. If you do want to stay updated on all things weather, especially as we're about to venture through the peak of hurricane season, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. If you happen to find this content helpful or informative, please hit that thumbs up button. It really does help us out a lot. All right, latest advisory on Franklin. You see it there, the thunderstorm still meandering around the Dominican Republic. The center coming on shore earlier on the 23rd, the morning of the 23rd, but still some very heavy rain beneath the cloud of thunderstorms, if you will, that brighter purple and red. Now, once Franklin gets back out into this area, that's when it's going to start to strengthen, but we're still watching for tropical storm conditions to continue at least for the next 12 to 24 hours on Hispaniola, and then on the eastern side of the Turks and Caicos as well. So that is important. This is also a heads up for Bermuda. We were talking about that it was likely going to be close. Look at this latest forecast here from the National Hurricane Center. Here's the latest on Franklin. Again, it's a shell of itself. It really has never been strong. It's a 40-mile-per-hour storm, but once it clears land interaction and gets into an environment that it likes, look at this. Saturday morning, 75-mile-per-hour hurricane, and now expected to get up to Category 2 status at least. There's room for this to even get stronger as it passes by Bermuda. Here is Bermuda right there, and that is Monday morning. So again, still a ways away. Still we have to get through the weekend before it gets close to us in Bermuda, but certainly something to watch. Eastern seaboard, of course, over here. Don't think it threatens the eastern seaboard in terms of direct impacts. It will certainly increase rip current risks all up and down the East Coast, may lead to some coastal flooding into New England, but we should miss out on direct impacts when it comes to Franklin on the eastern U.S. We're really going to watch this, though, for Bermuda. Latest computer forecast, it shows that little weird curve, if you will, way out into the Atlantic, then comes back to kind of split the difference. Not really the difference. It's closer to Bermuda, but there is Bermuda again right there. Models keep the center anyway to the east, but the worst side of the storm will be on the right side, that right front quadrant. So again, we're going to have to watch that closely to see how close, in fact, the center and all the nasty weather when it comes to Franklin gets close to Bermuda. Just keep that in mind if you have any kind of cruises or anything leaving the northeast or leaving the southeast towards Bermuda. Likely going to be compromised here as that storm is going to be very, very strong somewhere out in here. Also watching in the long range in that 7 to 10 day period for the Canadian Maritimes. Still, most of the hurricane models don't go out that far in time, but you see some of these models again getting it close to Nova Scotia, maybe even having direct impacts on Newfoundland as well. So we are going to keep a close eye on that. Elsewhere in the tropics are still two areas the Hurricane Center has highlighted this little flare-up of thunderstorms. This is what's left of Emily, kind of being brought back to life, zombie form here. Could become Emily once again if it continues to develop as is forecast. The environment out in this area becoming much more conducive for development. The wind shear backs off. The water temperature is crazy warm, so we may be able to get that storm to develop again. Should not be impacting anybody. Then a front comes and kind of rips that apart once it gets out here. Still just a teeny tiny thunderstorm out here near the Cabo Verde Islands. The development chances with this one continue to drop. We've been talking and highlighting about just how poor the environment is out here. Now, if you've seen our videos over the past couple of days, we've talked about something known as the Madden-Julian oscillation. That is going to work its way through the basin. It's a convective complex, if you will, of thunderstorms that helps to enhance thunderstorm activity after it kind of crosses through. So we're going to watch that closely to see. We're likely going to have our most favorable point in the Atlantic. But nonetheless, the basin is just not being supportive right now. We'll take it. Believe me. All right, so still watching for some heavy rain here. We're going to look kind of long range, and then I want to show you some ensemble forecasts when it comes to something in the Gulf of Mexico. There's been a lot of chatter on the social media for that. We're going to break that down in just 1 second if you stick with me. First, though, here is Franklin. Let me get my arrow back out. There is Franklin. That is what could become Emily once again. You see it kind of getting lifted north This is a cold front here, and it kind of absorbs Emily. Then it would become extratropical, post-tropical, and then be over with for all intents and purposes. The European wants to put Franklin towards the Canadian Maritimes. That's Newfoundland. By the time we get to August 30th, there's another wave that the European wants to develop as well. If you were with me on the video on the 22nd, I showed you that the European wanted that blow up of a storm towards the Gulf of Mexico. It doesn't have it anymore. It does have a strung out kind of entity there in the Gulf that would bring some tropical moisture to the southeast corner of the U.S. and parts of the North Gulf Coast, which we desperately need, by the way. That would be awesome. The point I want to make with this is that just don't trust those individual model runs. There's not even a storm out there to track at this point. With that said, yesterday the Euro had a crazy hurricane there toward Florida. Today, it's gone. I mentioned that would happen, that we would have it kind of show it, not show it, show it, not show it, and a bunch of different models on and off board at any given time. I do want to show you the ensemble forecast for that time period, for that last couple of days of August, early September. And there are a few, these are the European ensembles. Ensembles, if you're new to ensemble forecasting, different initial conditions put in, and the 51 members of the European model. When you put different initial conditions in, you still get kind of the same output, the same story or same solution, you get some higher confidence. And we do see here that as we get towards the 30th, 31st, or first time frame, that there are a few members on board for a little something to try to get going here. Note, though, I want to point at the colors of these lines. It matches up with the wind speed here, okay? Know that most of them are into the blue shaded area, maybe up to green. That's about a 60 mile per hour storm, so a middle of the road to strong tropical storm. There's one orange color in here that gets it to that 60 to 70 knot range, again pushing or just getting into that category 1 hurricane status. Again, all of that is still way too early. We don't even have a storm out there. But what I'm trying to show is that while we do have some European ensemble members latching on, not all of them are there, and most keep this thing relatively on the weaker side. It's something that we're watching. That MJO is coming through again, so we are going to have a little bit of help to kind of force up some thunderstorms through Central America, Western Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico. It's just going to be impossible to kind of know where that is until we get a storm born. So again, just be careful what you see out there. There's no reason to freak out if you're in this part of the world. We also have a cold front. Let me go back to my other map real quick. We're going to have a cold front right here too that will likely keep this away from Texas and parts of Louisiana, at least the western side, if something were to get going. But that will also help to introduce wind shear as well, which is not good for storms, good for us. A lot to iron out. That is so far down the road, though, as we get ready to close. Now, the GFS ensembles, less of its members are on board that something is going to get going, but they're a little stronger. You see the pinks and red show up, so that's going to be a fairly strong hurricane. But again, less of its models are on board. There is nothing to freak out about at this point. We will keep you posted. Hit that subscribe button. Again, we're going to watch this all the way through and keep all that other kind of garbage that's on social media off of here. This isn't garbage. I mean, it is garbage if you're feeling it, but this is actually happening right now. Again, that dangerous heat wave, this big heat dome, if you will, it's making all the rounds. It is so hot from the Twin Cities of Minnesota through Sioux City into the plains, Wichita, Kansas, excessive heat warning, through Little Rock, New Orleans, east of Dallas, just northeast of Houston. Big time heat continues. Record-breaking ridge of high pressure. I know the comments, it's summer, it's hot, but this is actually breaking records. We're measuring this by the height levels. When you have higher temperatures, you find the height levels in the atmosphere a little higher because air expands whenever there's heat. We use the 500 millibar level to kind of dictate that as well. And believe it was Wichita, Kansas broke a record for their highest ever recorded history, 500 millibar height. That is how much power this thing is generating here in terms of the heat in the central part of the country. So when we say it's hot, it's actually hot. I get it, it's summer, but really we should be winding down also from the crazy heat. Most have already seen their peak heating of the summer, climatologically anyway, so we should be starting to back things off. It's just not happening. Now, there is some relief coming. I want to point out a couple of things here. I'm going to zoom out. There's a big upper low here over the Hudson Bay. That's going to help to drain some cooler air back down, especially into the northeast and mid-Atlantic. We're calling this here, that's the heat dome, where you see that orange. This is going to start to push back towards the desert southwest. And note here, this is where we have some of that cooler air coming down. So places like Detroit, New York City, Roanoke, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, getting into the Carolinas, at least North Carolina, we're going to start to see some relief, kind of that backdoor cold front sliding down. It's going to take a little bit. That's going to be as we head into the weekend. So here we go. There's Thursday. This is going to be August 24th. This is without the heat index. This is the future temperature getting well above 105 degrees in Dallas, about 105 in Omaha. And again, because of that evapotranspiration, as we know it scientifically, again, that corn sweats. Again, when it gets hot, the corn also gives off moisture, and that adds extra humidity. You see it there. The dome gets a little smaller by Friday, but it's not helping us out in Kansas City just yet. 104. Dallas, we're still at triple-digit heat. 103 in San Antonio, and 101 in Houston on Friday. Look at the cooler colors, though. Relief is starting to come, slowly but surely. This is the temperature outlook over the next 6 to 10 days. So once we get beyond these next 4 or 5 days of big-time heat to the mid-Atlantic, there are high probabilities that we're going to see a nice big batch of cool air, again, all the way from Chicago through St. Louis, Detroit, into Pittsburgh, even down towards Atlanta, cooler than normal temperatures through New York City. The heat's still going to be back towards the desert southwest again, where I just showed you that was. The other thing that we need here is some rain. 6 to 10 day outlook in terms of the rain, higher than normal probabilities here for above average rainfall. This is going to correlate here with, I showed you some of the ensembles here, but at the very least, it does look like we're going to have an influx of tropical moisture towards the Gulf Coast, and especially the southeast part of the Gulf Coast, I guess northeast quadrant there of the Gulf Coast, southeast U.S. into Florida, as well as we do get kind of these rounds of tropical moisture. Let's hope that that's all it is. Let's hope we don't consolidate that into something stronger. But again, something that we are watching, where we're going to continue to keep the drier conditions really up to the Midwest and upper Midwest, even a shot at some above normal precip, again, for parts of the desert Southwest. Now, I want to kind of take this further out. This is Friday. A lot of that area underneath that dome of heat, if you will, is still going to be on the drier side. But look at this. We're going to start to see some changes happen. And the biggest changes start to happen towards the 29th into the 30th. Note all the rain starting to come back. This is where we have our strong cold front. Here, by the way, is Franklin. Right here, there's my little arrow over here. That is Franklin. So this front is also going to protect the eastern seaboard from Franklin. It is going to generate some rain. Look at the temperatures, though. That's 4 o'clock in the morning. Let me take you out into the afternoon. So our triple-digit heat goes away by August 29th in places like Wichita, Minneapolis, look at that, 70s. That's going to feel oh so nice in the Twin Cities. Chicago in the 60s by the 29th. Still dealing with some heat in Houston. That cold front's about right here. Dallas, we're doing, 90s is better than 105 or 106. And then as we get into the 30th, there we go. Wednesday afternoon, finally some of that relief gets down to the Gulf Coast of Texas. We get some extra rain towards Orlando, towards Miami as well. This is because that cold front is right there helping to pump in some tropical moisture and some relatively cooler air. But just hang on for a little bit anyway. There's going to be some big-time relief coming, even as far south as Houston. Again, we're still going to be likely in the 90s, but the low 90s with a nice clean sweep is much better than 100 to 105 without the humidity factored in. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, if you found this content helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And if you do want to stay updated on all things weather as we track the hopeful end of this heat wave in the central part of the U.S. and the very active tropics, you've come to the right place. Please hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you next time.